But first, while the Abbott government successfully stopped illegal migration by boat, the Albanese government seems to be letting what amounts to illegal migration by plane get completely out of control. The latest figures show that there are now nearly 75,000 failed asylum seekers in Australia awaiting deportation. Now, that's people who've come here by plane on valid visas, only to claim asylum once they've arrived. In September, that's the latest month for which there are figures, 2,005 foreigners who'd already arrived here sought protection visas. Over 2,000 in 1 month alone. Most of them reportedly are from Vietnam and China, but there are also considerable numbers from Iran, Burma and Pakistan. Now, on average, it's reported they're waiting just 26 days in Australia before they put in an asylum claim. And where there were more than 2,000 new asylum seekers in September, just 17 old ones left Australia. 14 did it voluntary and just 3 through deportation. And only 185 protection visas were granted out of nearly 1,400 cases considered, which suggests that while scarcely 13% of asylum seekers end up being accepted as genuine refugees, nearly all of them end up staying in Australia indefinitely. Now, on top of that, thanks to the High Court decision last week to overturn a 2-decades-old precedent, foreigners who commit crimes here and who, for whatever reason, can't return to their homelands, can't be kept in immigration detention anymore, at least says the court, meaning they get let out into the Australian community. And that's what's happened. What's more, as we learned today in question time, around 80 of these foreign criminals, including the minister admitted today 3 murderers and several sex offenders, all being released now, are apparently receiving what's called a status resolution support payment, otherwise known as welfare, from you, the taxpayer. And here is what that means in practical terms. We're talking about a payment that's around 80% of the dole value paid every fortnight to these people, plus a whole lot of other payments, including a financial hardship aid payment, $3,600, loans of up to $800 per person, a package of basic household goods costing almost $10,000, $300 towards a removalist, $3,000 plus for English language classes. Now, beyond the money, the big question Australians are asking is why are people allowed to come to this country from places that they then won't return to? Especially given that such a tiny percentage, 13%, turn out to be genuine refugees. We are just creating a class of people living in limbo, most of whom are would-be economic migrants, rather than people with a well-founded fear of persecution. That's the proper legal definition of a refugee under international law. Well-founded fear of persecution. Now, at one level, who can blame them for wanting to live in one of the world's best countries? But it's not our duty as a nation to accept as semi-permanent residents everyone who'd like to live here and who manages to get here under false pretences. If that were the case, we'd eventually be full of people preferring to live here than in the third world. What's happened here is that we've got a government in Canberra that's not serious about managing border protection issues or, more broadly, our ever-increasing migrant intake. And that's one of the most important jobs we elect any government to do. If we don't control our borders, including people pretending to come here as students or tourists and then claiming asylum, we are losing control of our sovereignty and letting foreigners, in effect, bluff their way into becoming Australians. So why is the government not talking to the opposition urgently about the swift passage of any legislation we might need, first to keep the Australian community safe from these foreign criminals, and second, to stop people routinely coming to this country as visitors from places that might seem to justify what turn out to be largely spurious asylum claims. Labor in opposition might almost never have helped coalition governments pass the legislation needed to solve the problems on their watch, but the coalition here today seems very much ready to help.
The government has, I think, a sovereign responsibility here to deal with a very serious issue. They should be taking advice from the Solicitor General on what the legislative fix is. They could come to us overnight with a draft bill which we would support instinctively. They haven't done that, and Australians are going to suffer as a result.
That's right. If the government wants a solution, the opposition will help them legislate it. I worked in Parliament for years and years and years. There's plenty of time to fix this before Christmas. Otherwise, December, January and into February, this will continue unabated. And if the government doesn't wake up to this offer, then there is only one conclusion, namely that failed asylum seekers living here indefinitely are not a problem that Labor actually really wants to solve.